o'clock, I'll call the Coos Bay City Council meeting to order. Would you all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to
the flag of the United States of America, the republic for which it stands, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. So tonight, we're going to have a joint meeting with our Planning Commission, but the City Council has some things that we need to take care of up front, and then we'll get into the joint session with the Planning Commission. So first item on the agenda this evening is public comments. This is the time that anyone in the public would like to make a comment. This is the time to do so. Preferably it's something that's not on the agenda, but either way, this would be the time to come forth and make a comment to the council. Anyone would like to make a comment? Just come up, give us your name, where you reside, and your comment, please. And you might want to pull that microphone down so we can hear you. Thanks.
Hi there.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, my name's Annie Velasquez. I am from Coos Bay, and I just wanted to make my public comment, let you folks know that we just opened up a business called Master Blaster of Coos Bay. We specialize in surface preparation and removal, so we were attending tonight especially because of the urban renewal projects that are going on within the city, so we were interested in maybe helping you folks out, putting our name out there, letting you know that we're here. We use 100% eco-friendly media, so what it is high-pressure blasting mixed with water and abrasive 100% recycled bottle glass. It is entraps itself in the water, so there's no big dust flume like sandblasting. So just wanted to say hello, and we are here, and if you have any questions, just let us know.
Welcome, and thank you so much. I know I got your card, and I was able to speak to your husband earlier, and I think the city manager also got a card, and Stephanie, so I think Phil did too. But anyway, either way, I'm so glad to hear that you got a service for us, and I appreciate you coming. Please come back and visit anytime.
Will do. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments this evening? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on. Next item on the agenda is the consent calendar. Council, how would you like to proceed?
I move that we approve the consent calendar as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar as submitted. Are there any other comments or hearing no comments? I'll call for the question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Hearing none? It passes. Thank you. The next item on the agenda this evening is approval of Building Safety Month Proclamation, and I understand Amy is going to, our Building Codes Administrator, you put it together and you're going to read it for us. Is that correct?
I am. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So May is traditionally Building Safety Month. This is the 41st year. It's sponsored by the International Code Council, which is an organization of over 64,000 members. Raises awareness around building safety, reinforces the need for the adoption of modern and regularly updated building codes, helping individuals, families, and businesses understand what it takes to create safe, sustainable, and resilient infrastructure. So this year is broken into themes for each week, starting this week with energy and innovation. Next week, training the next generation, followed by water safety and disaster preparedness. So if it pleases the council, I'd like to read this year's proclamation for your consideration.
Please do.
Whereas the city of Coos Bay is committed to recognizing that our growth and strength depends on the safety and economic value of homes, buildings, and infrastructure that serve our citizens, both in everyday life and in times of disaster. And whereas our confidence in the resilience of these buildings that make up our community is achieved through the devotion of vigilant guardians, building safety, fire prevention officials, architects, engineers, builders, tradespeople, design professionals, laborers, plumbers, and others in the construction industry who work year-round to ensure the safe construction of buildings. And whereas these guardians are dedicated members of the International Code Council, a nonprofit that brings together local, state, and federal officials that are experts in the built environment to create and implement the highest quality codes to protect us in the buildings where we live, learn, work, play. And whereas our nation benefits economically and technologically from using the international codes that are developed by a national, voluntary consensus codes and standards developing organization, our government is able to avoid the high cost and complexity of developing and maintaining these codes, which are the most widely adopted building safety and fire prevention codes in the world. Whereas these modern building codes include safeguards to protect the public from hazards such as hurricanes, snowstorms, tornadoes, wildland fires, floods, and earthquakes. And whereas Building Safety Month is sponsored by the International Code Council to remind the public about the critical role our community's largely unknown protectors of public safety, or local code officials, who assure us of safe, sustainable, energy efficient, and livable buildings that are essential to America's prosperity. And whereas prevent, prepare, protect, building codes save, the theme for Building Safety Month 2021 encourages all Americans to raise awareness about the importance of safe and resilient construction, fire prevention, disaster mitigation, energy conservation, water safety, training the next generation, and new technologies in the construction industry. Whereas each year in observance of Building Safety Month, people all over the world are asked to consider the commitment to improve building safety, resilience, and economic investment at home and in the community, and to acknowledge the essential service provided to all of us by local and state building departments, fire prevention bureaus, and federal agencies in protecting lives and property. Mr.
Now
Mayor.
therefore, I, Joe Bedani, Mayor of Coos, City of Coos Bay, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2021 as Building Safety Month. And I, in Coos Bay, Oregon, I encourage all our citizens to join their communities in participating in Building Safety Month activities. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Council, we'd like to have a motion to approve the Safety Month proclamation, Building Safety Month proclamation. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to proclaim the month of May Building Safety Month in the city of Coos Bay.
Second.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded twice to approve the Building Safety Month proclamation. Any other comments or discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, it passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is a public hearing on the Coos Bay Comprehensive Plan. So I would like to welcome this is the welcome to the Joint Planning Commission and City Council public hearing on the Housing Advanced Project. The project includes analysis of existing housing and land use policies, strategies, and regulations, and purposes the three separate amendment ordinances to the Comprehensive Plan and Development Code. Jim?
Sure. I think before I read the public hearing announcement, we'll have the presentation by staff.
Okay.
So Carolyn, are you on board?
I am. Good evening, everyone. How are you tonight?
Doing well. Thank you.
Thank you for that announcement, Mayor. I think that it's really great that the Planning Commission and the Council are meeting together. This is certainly an important topic. We dubbed this project the Housing Advancement Project because we have been advancing on this since 2019. House Bills 2001 and 2003, if you could go to the second slide, mandate that we do certain things. 2003 requires that the city update its local housing needs analysis. We got ahead of the curve on that and applied for the money in 2019. It was funded and we were awarded and completed that in 2020. The information that was gleaned out of that analysis is really a big part of what put together these three ordinances and these amendments that we're looking at this evening. That is really the kind of the framework for what HB 2001 can build from. That particular bill directs agencies to provide Oregonians housing choices that people can afford, promote more housing types, and update local rules to move housing barriers. The focus of this project has been precisely that, and we'll go into that more as we go through the presentation. The second piece of the legislature's action was the preparation of a housing production strategy. And that's kind of an interesting way to look at it, because when you think about what folks do to develop housing, they first have to start with the city. And we want to be able to create strategies that will lead them to build housing for people of all incomes and all types. So we moved forward with that, and I'll go into that in just a little bit. But the main focus of this is going to be on these ordinances. As the mayor mentioned, you're going to be looking at 3 ordinances this evening. The first one is Ordinance A, and that particular ordinance would modify our comprehensive plan policies and our goals related to housing. The supplemental council report gave you some more information on that. The second ordinance, we're calling Ordinance B at this time. This is very kind of surgically focused on House Bill 2001, mostly related to housing only. There are a few lapovers, but that's the primary focus of this particular ordinance. It implements what is going to be laid out in policy in Ordinance A. Ordinance C are other development code amendments that support the work of the HB 2001 goals, but also identify some commercial related changes to our code. Council talked about that, about a month ago. You gave us the green light to bring it to you guys this evening. I'd like to share that as we walked through this process, we had quite a bit of public outreach. So far, we had support from the Coos Bay Downtown Association. The Fair Housing Council has weighed in and supported these efforts. And Northwest Housing, an affordable housing provider in Oregon, also weighed in, and they were very helpful with some of their comments. We heard back from DLCD as we were moving through this, and they were very excited about what's being proposed now. Our housing team is comprised of LCOG staff. 3J Consulting was the group that put together the housing survey related to HB 2003, and I worked with these folks as well. The housing advisory group was very instrumental. Counselors, a couple of your counselors were on that committee. That was very helpful. We started our work back in November of 2020. And tonight, our consulting team of Rachel Dorfman, Zach Galloway, Kristen Taylor, and I will be presenting. Before we get to that, though, I want to walk you through a little bit about the survey that we sent out for House Bill H 2003 related to that, identifying strategies. This was fantastic because we were able to then glean some of the comments and suggestions from that survey to incorporate into these amendments. Next slide, please. It should say pre-production strategy HB 2003 at the top. The 3J survey that was put together we had a pretty successful response. About 50 folks responded. And one of the questions was, what should be the top priorities for introducing new housing regulations for middle housing? And the answers we got were very surprising. Next slide, please. In looking at this chart, there's a lot here, but I think I'd like to cut to the chase to the top 5 things that folks felt were important or very important in our city. One was to create opportunities for a broader variety of housing types. 88% felt like that was important or very important. The second was supporting the development of less expensive housing options. We had an 86% number on folks that felt that was important or very important. The third was making regulations more flexible. And we hear this a lot at the counter when folks want to get going and they feel like our processes have been a bit slow. That was also very important. The fourth one was increasing the number of housing units that could be built. 74% of the respondents of those 50 folks said, hey, this is important. And then the fifth one was to create more rental opportunities. It's very clear that not everybody can become a homeowner. So I think incorporating that rental option into some of the housing types that we're looking at is very important. Next slide, please. This identifies a number of comments that came in, and I'm just going to pluck a few that I think really speak to what we're doing here. One of them is jobs in Coos Bay don't pay enough to buy a home. Build housing that's affordable to rent and make it easier to build housing. Cut back on the regulations. Another, park models, less costly, should be permitted. Another that I thought was interesting and really fell into this HB 2001 umbrella was owning a duplex fourplex is financed almost identical to a single family mortgage if one lives in one of the units. Allowing this type of housing not only allows for more rentals, but gives an opportunity to a small-time landlord who can begin or continue to build equity. And then the other that really jumped out was to expand permissions for non-traditional housing, cob, natural homes, RVs, and tiny homes. So thematically, it really feels like there's a strong push to do things a little differently than we've always done, with solely, focusing on single dwelling units. I'd like to go back to the team for a minute and share with you who's going to be talking about what. This is on the next slide, please. Rachel Dorfman will be going over the comprehensive plan amendments in draft Ordinance A. Zach Galloway will be going over the draft amendments in Ordinance B. These are the HB 2001 Focused Development Code Standards. And I'll be walking you through Ordinance C that talk about some of the things we could do to support HB 2001 and commercial development in our city. Kristen Taylor is here from the LCOG crew, and she's going to be assisting all of us as we need. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to you, Rachel.
Thank you, Carolyn. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So first of all, on behalf of the LCOG team, I'd like to say that we really appreciate the opportunity to work with Coos Bay on the project. Carolyn has been an incredible partner to work with, and we've been lucky to work with her, and we think Coos Bay has been, is lucky to have her. So next slide, please. Actually, if you can go one more. Thank you. So the comprehensive plan is the natural starting place for both plan and code amendments. A comprehensive plan should provide overarching policy direction, which the development code and other regulatory documents reference in order to guide implementation. So there are 4 overarching themes that have helped guide the comprehensive plan amendments presented in Ordinance A. So those are 1, a Coos Bay suited solution. So we've worked very closely with city staff and representatives of the Housing Advisory Committee. We've also consulted Coos Bay specific data and perspectives to develop the changes proposed, including iterations on those changes. All suggestions were passed through this fundamental Coos Bay lens. So the second theme is implementing House Bill 2001. As Carolyn mentioned just a few moments ago, in the last few years, the Oregon legislature passed a bill requiring jurisdictions to take actions expanding housing opportunities throughout the state. The purpose of House Bill 2001 is to increase housing choices for the broad range of needs that accompany different life phases, preferences, and incomes. So this is the fundamental motivation for this work. DLCD's aim and LCOG's scope of work were therefore kind of the basis for these amendments. They're nested in, the basis for these amendments is nested in this legislation. So the third theme that you see on the screen is continuity between the Coos Bay Comprehensive Plan and Development Code. As I noted, the purpose of a comprehensive plan is to provide policy direction that the Development Code implements. Ideally, the plan is more general and less prescriptive, while the Development Code contains substantially more regulatory detail. The code must stay within the bounds established by the plan's overarching goals, policies, and objectives. So the project team believes that the Coos Bay Comprehensive Plan actually contains some overly prescriptive language, which can create legal ambiguity, limits the code's ability to regulate development, and may require more updating of the plan than is prudent. One can argue that by being overly prescriptive, the plan is minimizing the utility and purpose of the code and increasing the potential for conflicts. The plan should stay in its lane, so to speak, and provide more generalized and enabling language to guide the development code. So the fourth theme there is creating clear and objective standards and streamlining policy administration. Simply put, these will help increase efficiency and reduce barriers to the development of needed housing. Next slide, please. So this is an example of existing comprehensive plan language that ultimately creates a barrier to housing choice. The City of Coos Bay adopted development code amendments several years ago, allowing duplexes in single-family zones in anticipation of the requirements of House Bill 2001. In this case, we're protecting the integrity of established land use patterns, refers to single unit residential areas. The policy is now out of alignment with the development code and also in conflict with House Bill 2001. As the community's needs change, a decades-old static policy like this one needs to be revisited to ensure alignment between the code and plan and enable housing choices. The proposed amendments do this while also focusing on the fundamental value of compatibility. Next slide, please. So plan amendments also include adjustments that create more generalized and enabling residential plan designations. For example, within residential areas objective 1, the high density residential designation includes proposed language changes aimed at creating more housing near employment and commercial areas. It also defers specific density minimums and maximums to the more nuanced and detailed development code. So next slide, please. Just to quickly orient you on the comprehensive plan map, for that last example, I was referring to the areas in orange. And as you can see, these areas are primarily located near downtown or other commercial designations, which are in red. The map itself has not changed, but the name of this plan designation will change to medium/high density commercial residential. Next slide, please. Other examples of changes proposed to residential objectives include removing references to zones which were never implemented or have since been changed. The comprehensive plan currently dictates numerous residential zones by name, but it does not need to do so, and this actually creates the opportunity for unnecessary conflict as these zones change over time. The next example on the slide also speaks to streamlining and generalizing the plan so it's less prescriptive. The land use implementation objectives in the plan are supported by decades-old rationale and implementation statements. Plan language that is confusing or overly specific can be vulnerable to subjective interpretation, to challenge, and to appeal. So simply put, there are just too many words on these sections, and the amendments will remove or streamline the statements for several of the objectives. And then on the subject of realigning the plan and the code, before we move on, I also want to note here that the density maximum in the low density residential designation has been increased to 16 dwelling units per acre from our previous recommendation of 12. This was changed to enable the LDR 6 overlay zone, which has a density maximum that exceeds what is currently allowed in the comprehensive plan. So the amendment would resolve this conflict. It's also consistent with the theme of taking a clear step forward in support of housing in the plan while empowering the development code to manage the nuances of implementation. So next slide, please. So the amendments also looked at housing affordability, both in terms of state and federal programs, or what we consider to be kind of the formal capital A, capital H affordable housing, and also in terms of housing affordability in general. For example, amendments to Housing Policy 2.1, which you see on the screen here, enable some streamlining and incentives for affordable housing projects. And I also want to note here that the phrase allowing for development agreements for other incentive options was mistakenly presented in the ordinance as being existing language. It's actually new and should have been underlined, so sorry about that. Next slide, please. So finally, clear and objective policies help streamline the land use process and create improved efficiency. This ensures easier understanding by developers and is particularly important with limited staff. So amendments to help streamline the plan include ensuring internal consistency in policies and regulations, removal of redundancies, and updates to reflect current state requirements. For example, the examples on the screen there, Housing Policy 2.5 is amended to remove duplicative language. In Housing Goal 7, there's a reference to an outdated building code, which has been removed. And throughout the plan, the terms multi-family unit and single-family unit in reference to residential dwelling units were replaced with multi-unit dwelling and single-unit dwelling to reflect the fact that the term family is an arbitrary and inconsistent way to refer to housing units. So that's all for Ordinance A. Thank you all for your time. And I think if we go to the next slide, please. Yeah, there is some room for questions.
Any questions, anyone?
Not at this moment.
So if you're gonna waive development charges, who's gonna pay for that?
Currently, I can answer that. Currently, we do not have an established system development charges and haven't had since 2008.
Yeah. And on the building permits, I think I was mentioning here, it's always been the intent of the council that if we waive those, we have to find a way to pay for them. Because those fees support the building construction in our building department. So I know I brought that, I was going to bring that up, but so Rex, that would have to be handled in some fashion. The city would, if we did that, we'd have to find a way to pay for it because it offsets the cost of the operation. Am I correct?
You're correct. Actually, by city charter, the Building Codes Division is a enterprise, and it must function without any tax dollars.
And, we've been approached before to waive the fees, and council has never done that without having a way to implement or subsidize those fees if we did decide to waive them. So, anyway, that's how it's been in the past. Maybe the council can't change it, or the planning commission, or something else, but in the past, that's the way it's been. So, I don't think at this time we'll be doing that. So, are there any other questions? Anyone? On the council, the planning commission, I should say. We'll have a public hearing later on so.
Zach will be going through Ordinance B with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, council and commissioners. As Carolyn said, I'll be covering Ordinance B, which is our Housing Bill 2001 focused amendments to the development code, to the Coos Bay Development Code. If we jump to the next slide, there's a few points there that cover the main topic areas that I'll be going over this evening. The point of HB 2001 is really to remove barriers to housing development. We'll be covering those, and I'll provide a few examples as to what that looks like in the proposed amendments. We've attempted to standardize definitions across the development code, both in the package that I'm presenting, and then you'll see some of those terms, I think, in Carolyn's portion of the presentation. Number 3, streamlining the application review process. You heard from Carolyn that that was a point of emphasis in the survey information that we received, so that was an important focus for us. Creating clear and objective standards. This is really wrapped or is kind of goes hand in hand with streamlining your application review process. If you have clear and objective standards, there's less discretion that staff or a planning commission needs to exercise, so it's easier to move through the process more quickly. You heard Rachel outline a few areas where the comprehensive plan and the zoning district or development standards were not consistent with one another, so we've made changes that I'll cover that bring those things into consistent status, and so that removes some legal vulnerability and makes, again, just makes things easier and smoother to operate. And then for those of you who really dug into the weeds here, there's a lot of stuff that's struck through and new language proposed, especially in the procedures section, which is 17.130. The majority of that is simply reorganizing things to make them easier, more user-friendly, and easier to read, going through in kind of a linear, obvious, sequential way. And lastly, you heard Rachel explain that there's some density changes proposed. We've made similar changes in the development standards that were not reflected in the package that you received, and so we want to cover those this evening and point those out so you're aware of those two areas within the low density and medium density residential districts where those revisions are proposed. So we can jump ahead and I'll provide a few examples in this portion. We can jump ahead to the next slide. There we are. So Coos Bay was a step ahead of the game, so that was great. The duplexes that are required as part of HB 2001 for a medium-sized city like Coos Bay are already incorporated into the code. HB 2001 went a step further, and we've reflected that in the development standards as well, providing a exemption to the density standards for those duplexes. And then kind of generally put, duplexes need to be treated the same way that a single unit dwelling is. That's kind of the meat of it whenever you get to the details of HB 2001. Just making sure that your development standards are applied the same to both those housing types. And so if we jump ahead to the next slide, you'll see that there at the top list, you've got single unit detached dwelling and duplex dwellings all listed and allowed in the low density residential districts. And at the bottom, a very clear exemption to the density standards for duplex dwellings. So we're in compliance with HB 2001. Next slide, please. Under that second topic area, standardizing definitions, we just wanted to provide a few examples so you can get a feel for what that means. Very important with a code of any sort to make sure everybody's using and speaking the same language, so to speak. And so Coos Bay was mixing terms such as accessory living unit and accessory dwelling unit throughout the code. We've standardized those. So we're just so that the code only uses accessory dwelling unit. The next bullet down, again, the code currently is using apartment, condominium, medium density residential. All of those generally have kind of the same look and feel, I think, in people's mind, perhaps. And so we've standardized those in the definitions as well to be dwelling, comma, multi-unit. So a multi-unit dwelling, just a standard common approach to a land use regulation that's recognized by folks. And then we felt like there was kind of an overly detailed approach, providing lots of different definitions for different housing types. Attached single unit dwelling, a row house dwelling, a townhouse dwelling, which again, all kind of have the same look and feel when they're on the ground. So we've consolidated those for simplicity. So we go to the next slide. You can actually see what this looks like in the code just to get a feel for it. We've attempted to capture those and nest them all under D for dwelling so that a user of the code knows to go to that section and can find all of the information regarding different dwelling types. Next slide, please. Streamlining the application review process. In many cases, we heard from Carolyn that projects were going to a type 3 review for the Planning Commission. We've attempted to reduce that or change the thresholds and reduce the level of review so that more development types are able to go through type 1 or a type 2 application, which is handled by staff. And in some areas, we've provided an exemption, or we're proposing an exemption to the land use application process, what's being termed a general review. That means, again, that Carolyn and her staff can ensure that a project going through the building permit process can meet all the standards without a formal land use application process, which is timely or time consuming, excuse me. Next slide, please. And this, as I said, works kind of hand in hand, hand in glove with providing clear and objective standards. So included within the package is a proposal for multi-unit residential standards, which address compatibility between the multi-unit dwellings and other residential development in the community. But it also supplements the existing standards that are on the books and ensures that they are clear and objective. And in when you're dealing with more black and white, clear, objective standards, you can more confidently move that down to a type 2 approval for your multi-unit dwelling projects. Again, that streamlines the process in exchange for the more clear and objective standards. We go to the next slide, please. And lastly, I wanted to point out again, as I said, I wanted to point out the revisions that are proposed to the low-density residential districts. Your package currently shows that what's referred to here as SLR, a small lot residential zone, which is currently on the books in Coos Bay as LDR 6. Your package shows a minimum density of 10 dwelling units per acre and a maximum of 12. We're proposing what's shown on your screen here this evening to change that back to having no minimum, so that the low density residential districts would have no minimum density dwelling units per acre across all three of your low density districts. And then the other revision that is different from the package before you is a decision to retain the LDR overlay zone. As you see there in the center column, if you're looking at your package before you, in Ordinance B, that entire zoning district was removed. But as you heard from Rachel, the decision was made to increase the proposed density in the low density residential district designation, in your comprehensive plan to be 16 units per acre. That then allows you as Planning Commission, through your recommendation, and City Council to handle the actual maximum densities in the code without needing to return to the comprehensive plan for commensurate amendments. And then lastly, if we go to the next slide, there's a similar proposed revision to the minimum dwelling units. Your Ordinance B currently shows a minimum density of 12 dwelling units per acre, as you can see in the purpose statement. And we're proposing this evening to change that to 10 dwelling units per acre. The upper limit, the maximum, remains the same, 25 units per acre. That's the same as what's currently in the comprehensive plan and what is in the Ordinance B that's before you. We're just proposing with this revision to reduce that from 12 to 10 on the minimum dwelling units per acre. And with that, you have a little, obviously, you create a little overlap between the LDR and the MDR zones. It becomes a little cleaner for code administration. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Carolyn to cover Ordinance C, unless there are any questions. That's the conclusion of my presentation on Ordinance B. But happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Anyone? I guess not. Thank you.
Certainly.
Thank you, Zach. For Ordinance C, as I noted before, this many other regulations that we're proposing to modify, many of them do support HB 21 goals, but there are a few things in there that are really related to commercial development, and I'll be going through that. Next slide, please. What I did was I am identifying in a few slides really some key changes. This is an awful lot to go through, and we'd like you all to stay awake. It's pretty thick if you read through that whole packet. So the change in density in the commercial zoning district, in the commercial district right now, you're allowed to have multi-unit dwellings, so as a sole use. So this would enable folks to take advantage of this density increase to build more dwelling units, and that could happen in the commercial zoning district. That's allowed now, but this would have the force of some additional density options. We did some revisions of text in this section to create some uniformity throughout the code. And we also identified in our urban public district an expansion of uses to include libraries. As you know, the council has been discussing library at a park location in the urban public district. Under the current code, it was a little dicey if that could be allowed, but we believe that it does fit in with the general comprehensive plan policies for this. Next slide, please. These next amendments were related to Section 3 that talk about land development. We included some new language regarding RV parks and the creation of park model parks. We revised the manufactured home park section. We pulled it out of another part of the code and we put it all in here together. These are certified manufactured homes, so they can be in one place. Much of the development of these is mandated by the state of Oregon. And when these come in, we work very closely with the building official who has quite a bit of way on this particular type of housing. The multi-unit development standards we talked about a little bit before. These are really important so that we can look at having some compatibility in the look and size of these properties with single families, which are much more common. We've identified some new cottage cluster standards to offer an opportunity for smaller homes and open space with a neighborhood design that would allow some likely more affordable opportunities because these are generally smaller. We also added an affordable housing incentive section, identifying incentives like increased height, density, and lot coverage to incentivize affordable housing. This is being done throughout the country, and we've got some nice opportunities here to make something like that work. Next slide, please. The subdivision standards were revised in the last few years that we've been here, and we've been looking at development projects. It's become very clear that our code really didn't address how to deal with emergency vehicle access for flag lots. So the fire chief spent some time with me on that, and we went ahead and added this here. As more of the flatter, easier lots to develop are built out in the city, folks are having to look at more difficult construction. And from a health and safety perspective, it was important to add this. We added some landscaping and driveway standards to the off-street parking and loading section of the code. They were pretty lean in that area, and if you take parking and look at it as a part of a commercial development, it can be very complementary rather than just a big concrete block. So we think that this will add somewhat, and there was a need for some driveway standards as well. Also added here was the addition of some language to encourage solar installation. Heretofore, we did not have that. Next page, please. Next slide. And then this next page is really, I think, very exciting. We've created an adjustment review section. Kristen was really instrumental in putting this idea and formulating it on how it could work in Coos Bay. But basically, it's kind of like a variance, except that you don't have to go through a variance process. You can ask for a deviation from a lot of different code standards of up to 15% from the standard if you want to go through that process. It's done at a staff level. You're not having to go to the Planning Commission. So we're very excited about that. And then finally, I'm mentioning this again, it was on the other page about the affordable housing incentives that are identified in the ordinance. And this really springboards off of what Zach talked about early on about this policy, that we would consider this type of process to encourage housing for all income types. One thing that I really appreciated in this policy, if I'm going backwards a little bit, is we added some language that would allow the city to take a look at maybe incentives suggested by applicants. So if we didn't think of everything in this section, because of the comprehensive plan policy regarding incentives, the door is open, a crack for us to re-examine other ways besides what we have on the books now. Technology and industries and housing types, everything changes. And what's in play now, in 5 years, there may be something totally different. So that was particularly exciting to include that. And that's all I have. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. And I know that Zach and Rachel are available as well. So
Questions?
happy to give you a hand.
Questions, anyone? Carolyn?
Yes?
Nope. Jim, are you it?
I'm up, I'm ready to read.
Okay.
So prior to the public hearing, consistent with Oregon land use law, I'm going to read the municipal code criteria applicable to the amendments. Testimony, arguments, and evidence introduced at this public hearing must be directed toward the following. The proposed amendment is consistent with the applicable policies of the comprehensive plan. B, the proposed amendment is in the public interest. C, approval of the amendment won't result in a decrease in the level of service for capital facilities and services. D, the proposed amendment is consistent with the Coos Bay Transportation System Plan and would facilitate the planned function, capacity, and performance standards of the impacted facility or facilities. And F, the proposed amendment shall be consistent with the OAR 660-012-0060 requirements. If anyone believes that other comprehensive plan or the Coos Bay Development Code are applicable, please identify those criteria and introduce the evidence relevant to that criteria. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the Planning Commission, City Council, and others an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes an appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue.
Okay, so the final action on these ordinances will be considered on May 18th at the council meeting at 7 p.m. So, and before we start, I just want to ask the City Council and Planning Commission, have they had any ex parte contacts or biases related to the housing advancement project? They need to declare it. Anyone? I don't know how many planning commissions do we have virtually, so I just want to make sure that one? Two. You have any biases or contacts that would cause you to have a problem with this deliberation? No?
No.
Okay. Okay, at this time, I'd like to introduce Amy. She's the Planning Commission Chair. Amy, you want to introduce the Planning Commission members, or you?
I'm not sure who's online.
Who's online? Do we know?
I think Bill and Jeff. Okay.
Jim Berg and Josh Stevens are online as well.
Okay. Good. It's good to know who we have.
We're watching you.
All right, Jeff. You watch me a lot. All right. Okay. So, do we have any more staff or consultant presentations, or have we already gone through all that? Carolyn, anything
We're just
else?
here to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. So, any questions for the Planning Commission or the Council for staff or the consultant? Hearing none.
Mr. Mayor, sorry, I just wanted to thank Rachel, Zach, and Kristen and Carolyn for all the work. This is quite an accomplishment to get this done, so I just wanted to thank all the parties for the work that they've done.
Okay, so I will be opening a public comments. I just want to make sure first that anyone else on the Planning Commission or Council? No? Okay, so I'm going to open the public hearing, and let's limit our comments to 5 minutes. And I got Nate to keep track of it, just in case, but I don't think that'll be a problem. Come up and just give us your name and where you reside, please. How are you doing this evening? Good. All right, just speak in the mic so we can hear you.
Okay, I'm Jim Kingsley. I'm Jim Kingsley, and I live in Coos Bay.
You'll need to keep your mask on, please. Sorry. I know it's difficult.
Yeah, I know. Okay, I don't know, I was kind of getting the impression that you're going to be building public housing. Is this what this is all about?
Mainly.
So you're going to get into the landlord business or whatever you want to call it? I mean, you're going to rent public. You're going to build public housing, and you're going to rent. Will the city own these and rent them out to people?
The city's not going to be building any public housing. This is just to allow more housing to be done. State passed a law that we're reacting to, and but we personally, the city is not going to get into. I don't think. That I believe at this time.
No, I was just curious because they talked about the public housing and.
We're talking about housing and trying to make it more accommodating and being able to accommodate more housing per square foot or acreage, and we're trying to make it.
I got you there. Okay, thank you.
You're right. Anyone else want to chime in on this?
We're just promoting development.
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Amy. Very well said. Any other public comments? All right, so I'll close the public hearing. And any other questions or deliberation from the Planning Commission or the Council? Okay, hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. And so Amy, we'll let you take it over.
Okay. I'm just looking to request the motion making a recommendation to Council from the Planning Commission.
You got a Planning Commission that's pretty quiet.
They usually are.
I don't think they're normally that way, are they?
So are we going to?
We're going to go through Ordinance A, B, and C separately.
Okay. Well, then I guess I'll make a motion that we accept Ordinance A as stated by staff.
Can I get a second?
Second motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 I think, does Melissa, you have to do a roll call. Yes.
Yeah, that's a good idea. A roll call.
Commissioner Berg,
Aye.
Commissioner Davis.
Aye.
Commissioner Davis.
Aye.
Commissioner Davis.
He's actually saying aye. It's just really soft.
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear him.
Commissioner Marino,
Aye.
Commissioner Miller,
Aye.
Commissioner Stevens,
Aye.
Chair Aguirre.
Aye.
The motion to recommend approval of Ordinance A has been approved.
Okay, can we move on to Ordinance B? Looking for a motion?
Well, all right. I guess I'll make a motion that we accept Ordinance B as presented by staff.
Second the motion.
All in favor?
You need to do a roll call.
Oh, roll call. Sorry.
Commissioner Berg,
Aye.
Commissioner Davis,
Aye.
Commissioner Marino,
Aye.
Commissioner Miller,
Aye.
Commissioner Stevens,
Aye.
Chair Aguirre.
Aye.
The motion to recommend approval of Ordinance B has been approved.
And a third one for Ordinance C.
Okay, somebody else to do that one,
Jeff or Jim, would you like to make a motion? Looks like the
Yes, this is Jeff. I move to recommend council enact Ordinance C.
I'll second that.
Okay, roll call.
Commissioner Berg,
Aye.
Commissioner Davis,
Aye.
Commissioner Marino,
Aye.
Commissioner Miller,
Nay.
Commissioner Stevens,
Aye.
Chair Aguilar.
Aye.
The motion to recommend approval of Ordinance C has been approved.
Okay, so first of all, I want to thank the Planning Commission for taking this project on. September 2020, you've been working on this with staff, and LCOG I also like to thank. This has been a large task, but it's, again, the positive changes, I believe, and Amy mentioned that this is great for development. So I concur with that. And any other council comments at this time? Okay, and any planning commission comments by any chance? Well, it's always nice to get together, at least occasionally. So I want to thank you again, and I want to remind everyone the council will be taking this up on May 18th, and we'll be doing the final approval of this, I hope, or discussion of it, and going from there. So anyway, well, let's take a 5-minute adjournment. If the planning commission would like to stay for the rest of the meeting, you're more than welcome to. If not, I would totally understand. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rex.
Thank you, guys. Great job.
Thanks, Carolyn. Have a good night.
Thank you, Carolyn.
You too. Take
Bye.
care. Thanks, guys. You're the best.
Have a
Alrighty,
great
bye-bye.
night. Bye.
Can you grab the lights there, Carmen?
Yep.
Please? Thank you.
I'm gonna ride.
It's been a long day.
Yeah.
Thanks again, you two. Appreciate it. And the rest of the planning commission.
Appreciate the comments, thank you.
Thank you.
Don't forget to pen.
Okay, next item on the agenda is consideration to approve agreement with Pacific Power for the Art Wraps project. Jim?
Yes, thank you. The purpose of this agreement was based on the fact that the Downtown Association approached the city with a desire to transform some of the utility boxes downtown with distinctive artwork. And so we got together with Pacific Power and put together this agreement to establish the parameters for installation, maintenance, and removal of artistic applications selected by the city and to be placed on the Pacific Power transformer and utility boxes, all located within the city. For the purposes of this agreement, an art wrap is defined as the application to a box of an adhesive and weather-resistant material to affix an artistic impression upon such box for the general enjoyment of the community. Alternatively, a wrap may be a hand-painted artistic impression upon a box. So what we're requesting tonight is, if it pleases the council, authorize the city manager to finalize and enter into the city arts wrap agreement with Pacific Power.
Okay, so I think this is this is my opinion. I think this is great. I looked at how many on the map of the downtown utility boxes. I was surprised how many there are. So I think this is wonderful that the Coos Bay Downtown Association decided to bring this forth to us. I don't know, Stephanie, you want to make a comment about it or anything? Since Holly's not here, and I know that she's busy, and she's got, of course, nothing going on except opening the farmer's market tomorrow, right?
Yeah, they've been knee-deep in that. They're pretty excited about this project. Of course, this is the preliminary piece that needs to happen before they can start moving forward with other plans. They did want to emphasize that this is designed to be a net zero project to the city. So basically, the city handles the agreement, and the Downtown Association, through volunteers and their design committee, will move this project forward. And they have a lot of different ideas. They're in the process of developing the folks who will oversee this task force, which will include artists, volunteers, possibly the schools, the college, not Stephanie, who can only draw stick figures. But they're investigating which is going to be easier, more permanent. Obviously, the wraps, there's extra steps involved in that, so there may be different costs in that. The painting involves primering and then painting the designs after they're designed. But they're pretty excited about this project, and like you, I mean, we used to hang out as kids on some of those power boxes. They're pretty big, but you don't notice them if you see them all the time. So, but this will be a project that they can, maybe create some sort of an art walk, as we talked about in the council work session. For people to get out of their vehicles and check out downtown with.
I think it's great. Council, any other comments from anyone?
I have a question. At the work session, we talked about this agreement will be good for the entire city, so if other organizations like the Empire Coalition wanted to come forward and do it out there. And there was a question on how much that these would cost. Did we ever get an answer to that?
They're still determining that. They probably have a better idea than I do, because I don't sit on that committee. But that's certainly something that I'm sure they would be happy to share with the Empire Coalition. In fact, it might be good at some point to actually get those two together for a joint meeting to talk about, how we can work together on these types of things.
Roger?
Yeah, this is the first step, the first agreement. We'll still need to do one other agreement. This agreement, as provided in the language, provides this council or the city the opportunity to transfer our obligations for this contract over to a third party. And it was intended and such to do that to the Downtown Association. If there are other projects throughout the city, we can do the same. But this does hold you somewhat liable that should it be caused damage, there's some obligations to compensate Pacific Power, or if they want it removed, the obligations upon either the city or the third party, they'll have to remove it at their request. So we still have one more agreement to craft up. I don't know if it's been decided if that's going to be a standalone agreement or if we're going to include that with an updated agreement with the Downtown Association.
Any other comments or questions, anyone? Now, these wraps or the drawings that we put on, or the painting, that has to be approved by Pacific Power, correct, before it's done? Right.
They do get final say.
Right.
In my world, it'd be nice if we can provide not too many layers.
Right.
If we can transfer design approval to the Downtown Association and let them work with Pacific Power without a couple more layers here at the city, I think it'd make it a lot easier.
Correct. Okay. All right, so with that discussion, unless there's any other discussion, how would you like to proceed?
I'll make the motion to authorize the city manager to finalize and enter into the city arts wrap agreement with Pacific Power.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the agreement with Pacific Power and Art Wraps project, allow the city manager to move into the finalization of the agreement. Any other comments or discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, it passes. Okay, next item, consideration of approval to initiate Division Avenue right-of-way vacation request. Jim?
Thank you. City staff is recommending council consider vacating the undeveloped portion of Division Avenue between Lakeshore Drive and Patrick Avenue. It is unlikely the street will ever be developed due to the topography, and staff has contacted property owners abutting the proposed vacated right-of-way. No objections were raised. Pacific Power will have an easement to access overhead utilities. Should council initiate the vacation, staff will bring the vacation ordinance for a public hearing and council consideration on June 1st. We're requesting, if it pleases the council, to initiate the vacation of a portion of Division Avenue between Lakeshore Drive and Patrick Avenue. And there's a map projected above.
So this ordinance will come back to us, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Council, any comments or questions? Hearing none, how would you like to proceed?
I'll move to initiate the vacation of a portion of Division Avenue between Lakeshore Drive and Patrick Avenue.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to initiate the vacation of a portion of Division Avenue between Lakeshore Drive and Patrick Avenue. Any other comments, questions, concerns? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, it passes. Excuse me. Next item is consideration of award of contract for Plant 1 Headworks Project. Jim?
Yes, the city contracted with Jacobs to prepare 30% design plans for wastewater treatment plant 1, phase 1. During this design process, a condition assessment was performed, and the condition of the plant's headworks we found were not very good. In fact, the headworks were not functioning properly at all. The headworks is the first component of the treatment plant that removes the large organic and inorganic solids from the influent. Our consulting engineers recommended immediate replacement of the headworks. Based on the engineer's recommendation, the headworks replacement was removed from the Phase 1 Plant 1 upgrade, and separate plans and specs were prepared. Bids were opened last month. 5 bids were received. However, one of the bidders did not have the appropriate qualifications for their bid packet. This was deemed a major irregularity, and per Oregon statute, their bid was rejected and not opened. The other 4 bidders submitted both of the required qualifications. As a result, the city received 4 responsive bids. Due to the technical nature of this project, in addition to the standard Oregon Department of Transportation qualifications that are typically required in any wastewater project, the bidding instructions also ask for documentation from the bidder for their experience with construction of treatment plants and headworks for the last 5 years. Upon review of the bids received, the engineer reviewed the 4 bidders' qualifications related to the construction of treatment plants and headworks. Unfortunately, the 2 lowest bidders did not have the necessary qualifications. Therefore, the engineer recommended that the bid be awarded to the 3rd lowest responsible bidder, Stettler Supply Company, for a bid amount of $331,821. Staff agrees with the engineer's recommendation and also recommends a 15% contingency. Now, the engineer's estimate for the project was a range from $450,000 to $500,000. And the engineer's recommendation letter is attached to your report. A notice of intent to award was sent to all bidders with the understanding that the project would not be awarded until the project received council approval. However, this was done prior so that if a bidder wanted to protest, they had an opportunity. There were no protests submitted, and the 7-day period in which they could do this has expired. To avoid this type of situation in the future, for the projects that require this special type of qualification, the bids will have a pre-qualification requirement. During the advertisement, contractors will be required to submit a pre-qualification packet per the bidding instructions. If the engineer approves the pre-qualification packet, then the contractor will be eligible to submit a bid. This will extend the advertising period, but will avoid accepting bids from contractors that are not qualified to do a project. Funding for this project comes from the Fund 29 Wastewater Improvement Fund for wastewater emergency and unplanned projects. And what we're requesting council can do is consider award the contract for the Plant 1 Headworks project to Stettler Supply Company for $381,594, which includes a 15% contingency.
So anyone have any questions for Jim about the process and the bidding and anything on this?
Jim, can I, oh, sorry, Rob.
Go ahead, Lucinda.
I was just wondering, after this expense, what will be left in that fund for unplanned projects?
I'm sorry, I have to look to Nicole for that. She's thumbing through that.
I've got you on YouTube. I can see, Nicole, that you're thumbing right now through the documents.
Is anybody else having a hard time opening the engineer's recommendation? It won't pop up for me.
It slowed way down
No, I got
for a
it.
minute, but
It
it'll
said-
pop up eventually.
So we have approximately $4 million in that line as of today.
Okay. Thank you.
Rob?
Jim, my question was, is a 15% contingency standard? Seems a little high.
It's standard.
In fact, I saw, I forget what it was, I was looking at some documentation. They had a 20% contingency on some of these things, which I thought 15 was high, but anyway.
Yeah, the contingencies, I mean, sometimes they'll be lower, maybe we go as low as 10, but that's rare anymore. And especially with the unknowns or working with old equipment like that.
So how, overall though, how have these contingencies been coming in? Are they been lower than 15% or?
Not used.
You mean the use of them? Have we used them? For most of our wastewater, we have not been using the whole contingency.
Good.
But you have been using some of almost all the contingencies.
Not with the wastewater projects.
Any other questions, council? If hearing no other comments or questions, how would you like to proceed?
I move we award the contract for Plant One Headworks project to Stetler Supply Company for $381,594, which includes a 15% contingency.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to award the contract for Plant One Headworks project. Any other comments? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any opposed? Sorry, Lucinda.
No
Hearing none,
worries.
it passes. I'm sorry I run you over, so just go over you sometimes. All right, next item is consideration of approval to adjust sewer user rates. Approval would require adoption of Resolution 21-10. So, Roger, are you handling this, or Jim?
Nicole.
I think
I can take it.
Nicole, I'm sorry.
That's okay. As you know, we just went through the budget committee process. Part of that development of our budget includes consultation with a rate consultant to analyze our sewer rates in comparison to what we need for operation and maintenance, outstanding debt service, and pending future projects. So kind of fits into his model, and then he can help us determine what that rate needs to be in this upcoming year. That determination was 5.5% increase, which is equal to the same increase we had last year. The process is we bring that to the budget committee, and if approved, we then come to council for adoption of the resolution, which is what the water board needs to authorize amending their computer system for our billing purposes. With the staff report, we did a survey, which we usually do, of area, other communities and what their sewer rates are. So you can kind of see where we kind of level out with them. And then also we've provided you with a history of the rate changes. So if you have any questions?
Questions, anyone for Nicole on this issue?
I think it's probably worth pointing out why our rates are so much higher when it comes to the
Certainly.
facilities that we have to.
We are somewhat of a rare breed when it comes to wastewater. Most cities only have one treatment plant. Many cities have very few pump stations. That is not the case here. In addition to having more than 90 miles of pipe in the ground, you have 26 pump stations. And pump stations have an average lifespan of about 20 years. The council has been good stewards and reinvesting in the wastewater system to replace pump stations. We're generally in planning and replacing a pump station a year. Even at that, we don't get to them all within a 20-year cycle. In addition, you have 2 treatment plants. Again, most cities only have one. And the city has, in the past, evaluated, would it be better, could it be cheaper in the long run if we went to one? But that cost was too high at the time, and I want to say, Jim, that was 2009-ish that we looked at that, and at the time, it was $50 million to re-engineer the system, because you had to change the pump stations and how everything flows at that time. So that's one of the main reasons. You've just undergone a major capital improvement with wastewater treatment plant 2, and you're making plans to do upgrades to treatment plant 1, which was originally built in the 50s and hasn't been updated substantially since the 90s. And I think it's fair to say a little bit more history. The council back in 2008, I believe, made a decision. They were faced with this enormous bill, a requirement from DEQ to undertake, at a minimum, $80 million worth of upgrades to the wastewater infrastructure. And that was just what Jim would call the low-hanging fruit in order to improve the system. This council and the councils before it have invested much in the wastewater system, and will have to continue to do that. It never ends because the system is old and constantly wearing out. I would say you do have some pipe in the ground that may be 80 years old still, but you're replacing pipe every year, you're fixing pump stations, making plans to improve the treatment plants, all in an effort to, for water quality. So they chose at that time to manage these capital projects through debt, instead of saying, okay, we have $24 million to spend this year, we're going to need to raise the rates for everyone $24 million. You chose to take this on bit by bit through a strategy, and the strategy at that time envisioned at least 6.5% rate increases. I think it's been fortunate that the last 2 years that that's not been the case. It's actually been 5.5. It would be nice to be 0, but I think the mayor may remember a time when the council tried to keep rates status quo for several years, and then unfortunately the cost just mounted up, and there was at least 3 years of triple or double-digit increases. It's just expensive utility to operate.
And those decisions in the past, I mean, hindsight's 20/20, but those decisions in the past are impacting what we have to do in this age.
I think that, you know, from a staff perspective, I think the council's to be commended for your stewardship and investment into this infrastructure is going to reap benefits not only in the near term, but in the long term.
Yeah, I can tell you, I've been on some conference calls, you know, through this pandemic, and people asking for grants and stuff. And these other cities, large cities, only have one treatment facility. And I'm always amazed at, you know, the complicated system that we have. And I just want to remind everyone, you know, 5 years ago, this council was faced with Plant 2, and we took that on and made sure it happened. And without that initiative and us taking that on, we were facing a moratorium with DEQ, which would have shut down any development. And if you look around now, you can see all the development we have. And as Roger stated, I think this council, I'm proud of this council and the infrastructure investment we put into the infrastructure, and not just this, but into streets and everything else. That was a goal that we've taken on. And because of it, I think we've become, you know, a much better city. And because of it, we have much more development happening. And on top of it, really, this is a development cost that we put into the city, and many contractors, workers, and a lot of things. So, I mean, having this rate, it'd be great to have 0, but it's just not something that's for us to do. And so what we've accomplished, I'm proud of. And unfortunately, we're going to have Plant 1 to deal with, but we're staying ahead of it right now. And as Roger mentioned, I remember we kept the rates at flat, and then pretty soon we were dealing with 15% and 18% raises, and trying to have the public take that on all at once is very difficult for them. So
That wasn't in the recent past, though. That was in several years ago.
Oh, this is further back, not since
2004, 2005.
Right.
Yeah.
So these are years past. So anyway.
I'm just curious, is there any valuation that's placed on our wastewater treatment system as a whole?
I do recall hearing numbers of what it would cost for us to replace it as a whole unit, and I don't remember what it was, but it was in the hundreds of millions.
And, you know, and we're very conscious of this. I mean, because of it, this council has decided that we're going to take on managing and operating our own wastewater facility, because we felt that it's the right thing to do. And so, you know, I think that these are good decisions we've made. And like I said, unfortunately, the rates come to us every year, and it's something that we have to address, but I think it's the correct thing to do. It's maintaining our system. So, other comments by the council? If we hear none, then I need a motion on the resolution before us.
I'll make a motion to adopt Resolution 21-10, adjusting sewer user rates, charges, and fees.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt Resolution 21-10, adjusting sewer user rates, charges, and fees. Are there any other comments? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, it passes. Thank you. Next item is city manager's report. Roger.
Yes, I'm happy to report that another infrastructure project is been kicked off, and that is the street lamp conversion project. They actually began working on that last night, and in one night, they replaced 57 lights down on Bay Shore.
Wow.
So that's moving along now, and I think August is when we anticipate getting that completed. So, and that's over 1,300 street lamps throughout the city that'll be changed. We are just about 8 weeks away from taking over the city's wastewater utility. You know, for the last 25 years, we've contracted out the operations and maintenance of that. It's no small undertaking to make that switch, but I'm very proud of what Jim and his team has been able to accomplish. There's been a lot of planning. There's weekly meetings, and actually I think there's just weekly meetings that I go to. I think there are daily meetings in Jim's division. I'm happy to tell you that they have filled the top 5 positions, which includes the wastewater superintendent, wastewater engineer, wastewater collection supervisor, wastewater treatment supervisor, and a wastewater lead. In addition, if you need to talk with Jim or Jennifer over the next 3 weeks during the afternoons, you'll probably have to make an appointment, and you'll probably have to be an applicant because they're spending all of their time doing interviews. They're very confident. They're extremely pleased with the level of qualifications of the applicants we're receiving. So high expectations. As you're aware, Chief McCullough is in the home stretch of his employment time with the city of Coos Bay. He's going to be, he's in his 26th year, but he's within less than 60 days more time active duty with the city of Coos Bay and being Coos Bay's top cop. Deputy Chief Chapinar has been preparing, and I have no doubt he'll be more than prepared to take the helm as Chief of Police on July 1st. Today, as part of the transition plan, Sergeant Tom Lindahl was promoted to the rank of captain, and he will join Deputy Chief Chapinar and Captain Mike Schaefer as the administrative team for the police department. With now Captain Lindahl's promotion, that left a vacancy in the front light supervision, and that is a sergeant's position. So the other promotion that was made today, and I should have written it down.
It's Officer Dan Lindahl. Dan Henthorn was promoted to sergeant.
Thank you. Things continue to make changes. We're very pleased with the staff we have at the police department. It's nice to be able to grow your own and to cultivate our employees and make them ready for increased responsibilities. And lastly, I would share with you that as to council goals, we're scheduled to bring that to you for further discussion at this month's work session. And I thought I wanted to get that out before one of the council members, like Rob, would be asking me, where are we at on that? So, I work better with deadlines, so I just went ahead and gave myself a deadline that we're going to discuss it later this month.
Okay.
That concludes my report.
All right. Lucinda, council comments. Start with you.
No comments, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Carmen.
I guess my comment would be that I'm excited to hear that Coos Bay has moved into the moderate risk level.
Yeah, that's awesome.
For the COVID-19 restrictions. So, yeah, just excited to see that we're moving forward and lowering our risk level as a community. Just a reminder to stay vigilant. Let's keep it going in that, trending in that direction so that we can continue to open up and be more of a open community. And business-wise, it feels really good.
On top of that, just to take off a little bit on that, the state itself is out of extreme now.
Oh, wonderful.
So we milked the hospitalization, so there's no more extreme. And so, which is a great move. So not just for us, but as a state also.
Wonderful.
Anything else, Carmen?
I think that's it for me today.
Okay, Phil.
First of all, I got my ballots in the mail,
Mm-hmm.
so it is time to vote. Even though it may not be a large election, it's still, there's a lot of boards and committees and things that are important to our community, so we need to be sure and vote. I do want to take a moment to say that if you remember a few years ago, the citizens in this area approved a $59.9 million bond for the schools. And at that time, the superintendent decided to put together an advisory group that's called the Bond Oversight Committee to just advise the superintendent. They don't vote on anything, they don't make decisions, they just advise the superintendent. And I am the city's representative on that committee. And we haven't been meeting because of COVID. And yesterday we had an extensive meeting following the social distancing and mask guidelines. But I wanted to kind of get you up to date on what's happening since Marshfield Junior High is getting pretty close. And I think Nicole has some, the fire chief helped me with a slide presentation. Actually, Roger helped me with, and Nicole helped with this. But so it was a $59.9 million bond, and because of the school district's extremely good credit rating, when they sold those bonds, they actually netted $77 million, 76 something. And some of that money, the money that was not being needed right at the moment, got invested so that it would be available later, and that has grown an additional $2 million. So now we have $77.9 million for a $59.9 million bond. East Side School is finished. The final walkthrough will be in September, which is the one-year walkthrough. Marshfield Junior High is almost complete. I think they said it's almost 70% complete. The third floor is pretty much close to finished. You'll see a lot of their equipment leaving the site within the next 30 days while they get ready to pave the parking lot. And that one is, so the East Side School came in about $1 million under budget. Marshfield Junior High is under budget. The project contractor has been extremely good to work with. It's Chambers Construction for both of those buildings. And so that's wrapping up and winding down. And so now, because they were able to sell those bonds and for the extra dollars and the extra money is available that they didn't think they were going to have, they're going to be able to complete the Madison School remodel like they had originally planned. So Madison now will get a $17 million remodel, and the contractor has been chosen for that, and it's Scott Partney Construction. 83% of that money spent on that school will be local contractors and subs. So that's a huge shot in the arm for the labor force for this community. That's a really big deal. So they're looking. They just awarded that contract to Scott Partney, and he's looking forward to getting started with that. When the junior high opens, those students and teachers will move from Blossom Gulch into the junior high, and then everyone from Madison will move to Blossom Gulch for 1 year, and the Madison remodel is due to be finished in August of 2022. And then, as it stands now, if everything stays on track and at budget or under budget, there will be money to complete a few more projects that got put on hold because they weren't sure how much money they would have.
Phil,
That's what the junior high is going to look like when it's finished. And that's Madison Elementary.
Great.
The large piece you see on the right is a new library that Madison Elementary will get. All of that roof structure out there is a flat roof, and everything will be replaced with a new pitched roof. So it'll be better for our climate. All of this information will be put out on the schools, on the district's social media pages sometime this week. But I asked them if I could have this information to share with the council tonight, and they gladly agreed. The project managers for this $60 million project have been so complimentary of city staff. They said that the Coos Bay City staff, and they work all over the state of Oregon, but they said the Coos Bay City staff has just been exceptional to work with, extremely responsive, easy to deal with. It's just been a real pleasure, and they have been extremely complimentary about the entire process. There are permits that are still in the review process that they anticipate getting soon to continue this on. But I just wanted the council to know, $60 million is getting spent in this community on all these schools, $77 million by the time it's over. And there's just glowing recommendations about our city and about our staff and the workers. Everyone's been very impressed with how things have been going. I just can't be more proud of this city and the citizens for stepping up and helping these schools and provide a great place for our children and grandchildren.
Phil, I know Sunset has been in need of the heating and cooling system upgrade for some time. Has that been discussed at all?
It has been discussed. They're waiting to see how much money is left once Madison is done. The priority with Sunset right now is security. And so they're looking at some sort of a reconfiguration or remodel of their entryway and that foyer. They want that to be a higher priority than anything else for the first monies that Sunset gets. One of the things that they put on hold was a new HVAC system for Millicoma, and that looks like they're going to be able to make that happen. But Sunset is on the radar, but nothing's been committed yet. So that's pretty much all I have.
Well, that's a great report, Phil, and it's nice to, we're prejudiced with our city staff and our departments and what they accomplish, but it's nice to hear that we're not the only ones that feel that way.
Yeah.
And, others that have dealt all over the state realize that, we have a great department here, so it's nice to hear. Thank you. Stephanie.
I really appreciate that report. It seems like every time I drive by there, which is really often, something new is happening at Marshfield, and I appreciate the update on the report. That's exciting news. Very exciting.
It's very exciting.
Also, just to piggyback on what Councilor Matthews said, in the press conference today, the reasons that Public Health gave for the reduction in our risk measure is, of course, people taking the preventative measures seriously, but also getting vaccinations. Vaccinations have dropped off, and so they encourage folks who are waiting to get theirs to look for an opportunity. They're out there pretty much anywhere, and those coupled together will continue us on that trend, hopefully downward, and to remain vigilant. Also wanted to mention that tomorrow, on Wednesday, the farmers market opens in downtown. So on Central, it's a little bit shorter this year because of some construction that's going to be happening, but they're taking Block 1, Block 2 of Central Avenue, as well as the parking lot for food court. And also, that will open up at 9 o'clock. There is an hour that they have set aside for those who have conditions that need to get in there and get out before the general public. It is an open air market, but you are required to wear a mask in that. COVID mandates are in place in there. It is an event, it is a special farmers market event, so it's a little different than a grocery opportunity that they were under last year. The state did put in some guidelines, so please be kind to the vendors, please be kind to the management. We have very small management staff and volunteers that are doing this, and vendors as well, that are doing this for our community. So try not to get frustrated with them if they can't answer a question right away, or if you just, have opinion on how things should be. I know that we have talked about when you're inside of a business, know that they are following protocols that are given to them by their superiors. So just remember to be kind is probably the biggest thing. Market goes until 2 on Wednesdays now through October 27th. So please come enjoy the beautiful produce, handmade breads, the food court, which is, you can order it and then you have to take it and eat it elsewhere at this point. But great things happening in downtown. And then be sure you stop in and visit the many businesses that we have down there. Make sure you go inside and check them out. They could really use your business as well.
Thanks, Steph. Ron?
Councilor Kilmer forgot the most important booth at the farmer's market, and that's to visit the Coos Bay Library booth. And I believe tomorrow they will be giving away free books, both children and adults. So I encourage everybody to stop by there and learn about the library services. Oh, and I keep being remiss. Over the winter, the Boys and Girls Club had a couple flags come down off the flagpole, and a few weeks ago, the Coos Bay Fire Department was kind enough to come out and rehang our flags for us. I told them they were going to be out there either way, either to hang the flags or to help whoever fell off the ladder while we were trying to hang the flags. So, thank you to Chief Anderson and the fire department.
Wonderful.
That's it? I just want to, I'm pleased to see that we're down in the moderate metrics. Hopefully we'll be down to low. I'm glad the state's moving in the right direction. I'm also pleased to see that the farmers market's back. I will be there. I encourage everyone to go down. It's just a great venue. Even through these tough times, they've made it work. Last year they made it work, and they're going to make it work again this year. It's a draw for all kinds of people, and you won't be able to see their smiles, but I know they're smiling underneath their masks. So anyway, I'll leave that at the end of my comments, and we have an Urban Renewal Agency meeting to follow. So I'll adjourn this, and Stephanie will hand the Urban Renewal. And thank you so much for attending, everyone.
Is everybody good to go ahead and continue on to the next meeting?
Rolling. Yeah.
Or do we need to take a break? Let's go.
Yeah,
Okay.
Carmen has to get on the road. Yeah.
Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and call the Coos Bay Urban Renewal Agency meeting to order. And our first item on the agenda tonight is public comments. So do we have any comments from the public in the room or anything that has come in prior to the meeting? Then we'll move on to the consent calendar, which is approval of the April 20th minutes.
I move that we approve the consent calendar.
Second.
All right, we have a motion to approve the consent calendar and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Our next item is the consideration of the amendment to 4th Street construction management contract. And of course, it's not going to come up here.
Okay, I'll
Is
take that.
Do you want to take it away, Jim?
Sure.
Okay.
Good weekend.
So Knife River Materials was previously granted an extension to their 4th Street construction contract, and the extension was granted because the startup of the project was slowed due to COVID-19 pandemic and shutdown, as well as the addition of some street lighting and some additional work along Curtis. The unforeseen pandemic event was out of the control of the contractor as well as hindered the ability to get materials delivered in a timely manner. Therefore, their construction contract timeline was extended 6 months from the end of December 2020 to the end of August 2021. Because of this extension, Civil West, who's the engineering firm doing the construction management on behalf of the city, is requesting an amendment to their fee for their for their construction management contract. This amendment will cover the construction management inspection for half of those additional days that were granted to Knife River Materials. The consultant worked for the other half of the days with their existing contract budget. So the funds for this contract with Civil West came from the Downtown Urban Renewal Capital Projects Fund. The original contract was for $150,000, and they're requesting an additional $51,744 to finish out the project at the end of August. So what the staff is requesting, if it pleases the agency, approve the amendment to the 4th Street construction management contract with Civil West Engineering for a fee not to exceed $51,744.
All right. Are there any questions? Then I will entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve the amendment to the 4th Street construction management contract with Civil West Engineering for a fee not to exceed $51,744.
Second.
Just for clarification, so this amount will be for the completion of the project? There'll be no more extensions?
That's correct.
All right, thank you.
I believe the funding runs out, didn't you say, in September? Or?
Yes, it does. However, we have reached out to the bank to see if there's interest in giving us a little bit more time, because we do have potentially some additional streets we might be interested in looking at, because there are some funds that might be available. So it's work in progress.
But it wouldn't be for extending this project?
No, just availability of drawing the funds.
Okay. Any other questions or concerns? All right, we have a motion to approve the amendment to the 4th Street construction management contract with Civil West Engineering for a fee not to exceed $51,744. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. And our last item on the agenda has been removed.
Correct. We're going to want to reschedule that for a meeting to be determined sometime in the future.
All right. So if there is nothing else to come before this body, we are adjourned.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Drive safe, Carmen.
Yes. Coffee time.